pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Please call the roll.
Mr. John? Mr. Sharon?
Here.
Dr. Bridges?
Here.
Mr. Jester?
Here.
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Colonel Waters?
Any special recognitions for this evening?
Oh, none this evening?
And I see no architect or departmental, I guess we have our departmental report.
Yes, we do have a departmental report, and for that, I would ask Ms. Barbara Ellis to approach the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my exquisite pleasure to announce that the applicant portal is alive and well. We finally have an electronic application system available for all of the jobs with Lawton Public Schools, and that's about 2,000 employees. Now, what's important about this is that I didn't think it was going to come to pass, and this was one of the job targets for my department for this year. And on June 30th at 4:25, okay? PM. We finally received the news that we would be able to open the portal and it wouldn't interfere with the security of any of our other applications for the district. And that was extremely important, that we would not interfere. So I'm just tickled, and I'm going to tell you that we owe that thanks to Leah Osborne, the Director of Data Processing, who put up with all my deadlines and came to give me that news at 4:25. With Norma Durgan, who helped me to establish the platform that we were going to use, because if you won't recall, but we had quite a few illnesses and absences and surgeries during that particular time that I thought that this will never work, we'll never get it up, we'll be in the same position we were before. And then last to Barbara Mullen, who has now stepped up to maintain it, because again, we're changing employees in that area. And so she is putting all of the job descriptions and the job announcements into the applicant portal now. But it's a blessing, because in the past platform that we used, there were 3 different places that you had to put the job announcements. Now, there's one place to put that job announcement, and you never have to do that again unless you make a change to the job announcement. And these are the advantages that you have to having an electronic portal. Now, when we talk about the advantages for the district, we're going to talk first about paper cost. I don't have the exact amounts, but if you know that we put out 40 and 50 jobs in a month, we run 4 pages of an application for every job that we run, and we distribute them and people pick them up, and we have to have them available for that. So that's definitely going to be a cost, and we'll realize that in the next year when we see what our paper cost is. We have 3 rooms of files, just of applications, because once a person applies for a job, we keep the application along with all of the job descriptions that we keep for a period of time so that we know who applied for the job and what the applications look like. The workload, just for the printing alone, we have to wait sometimes a few days to get those printed because there's so many of them. Assembling them, stapling them, the references that go along with them, the cost for mailing and the cost for distribution. The approval for the applicant for the position has to be done by someone. And then we're always wondering, how on earth are we going to use our present application as a recruiting tool? Well, now we have it. We know that we can distribute this information worldwide. It's on our website. It is on the front page of the Lawton Public Schools website. So I encourage everyone to please, if you're looking for a job, consider Lawton Public Schools, and that's my plug for employment. But the advantages to the applicant are, for every job that an applicant applied for, they would have to fill out a new application. They'd have to attach a new certification. They'd have to attach a new driver's license, a new copy of a social security card. All of that information can now be uploaded into the portal once. And that application can be used multiple times as you progress through promotion or as you progress by applying for different jobs. As you increase your certifications or your areas, you don't have to rewrite another application. You simply upload a new document, and it all puts it into a file that anyone can look at that has access to it. At one point, we needed to decrease expenses, and so we did not mail out references for our applicants. We gave that responsibility to the applicant. And we said, you'll have to take this, get it filled out, return it to us. Because we could no longer afford to give a postage paid envelope to an employee or send it out and get the responses, the number of responses. It wasn't economical. Now it goes electronically, and it goes into the email system for that particular person. Now, if they don't have access to the electronic system, any computer access will work so that they can go into applicant portal, fill out the reference, and then return it with the application, and it will attach itself automatically. So we're tickled, if you can't tell. On the job owners, we have 3 secretaries that are working with certified support and temporary jobs. They will view and examine all of the applications that come in to determine if all of the documents are there, which will be something that we haven't had the opportunity to do in a long time. It's been one-on-one, and it's been a challenge, to say the least. Now, once those applicants have been approved, they go into the system where the job owner, the principal or the executive director of secondary ed, or anyone who owns that job, can go in and only view those applications specific to that job. They don't have to go through the files and volumes. They don't get to see everybody's information that's in the file. There's a security issue with being able to see only the jobs that apply to you and apply to that specific job. No more trips to Shoemaker Center to go through the files should be just awesome, because you can view that from any computer access with a password, as long as you're given the password and the information to sign in. So we're tickled. This is only the beginning, though. This is the tip of the iceberg, and everybody kind of shakes when I say that, because this was monumental. We've been working on this for approximately 3 years now. The next step will be to tie the process in so that the prospective applicant moves from non-employee to employee status through the pay scales, the benefits packages, and the proposals that they will utilize throughout their tenure with the district, and then through their retirement, so that all of this will be configured electronically. The formulas will be in there. It won't be fill out this sheet of paper and move it to this person's desk, fill out this sheet of paper and move it to another person's desk, or have the calculations incorrect, because they're all done with the computer-based application, and the formulas will have to be examined, of course, but they will be correct. So we're just simply tickled that that's going to happen. We know that everyone won't have access to a computer, so we've considered that fact, and we figure if Walmart can have a kiosk, we can have a kiosk. So we'll have a kiosk where an prospective employee can come into HR to be able to go into that application and fill it out. While they're here, we can give them the help that they need. They can go to any public access, the library, or anywhere else that they may have access to a computer, and go into the Lawton Public Schools webpage, click on that applicant portal button, and get into that. So we think that it's going to be a very good advantage for the district to have access in this particular way. We also think that it's going to be an excellent recruiting tool. So celebrate with me, please. Thank you. I have one other announcement to make, because Dr. Deegan said if I don't brag on us, who will? So I will tell you that in 2011, we started the new subfinder system, and I think all of you are aware of that. And along with the subfinder system came the involvement of being able to look at the number of employees that were leaving us and applying for unemployment compensation and receiving it. And just the quarterly reports for 2011, quarter 2, $32,000. Quarter 2, 2012, $28,000. Quarter 2, 2013, $22,000. Quarter 2, 2014, $7,000. Quarter 2, 2015, $2,488.12. So our ladies have been working very hard and diligent to make sure that we keep everything as concise as possible, so that we know that all of our employees are going to be treated very well while they're here. And once they leave, they're not going to be able to utilize any kind of sources to collect unemployment, because we're going to do everything we can to keep our employees. And that's what we hope that this is showing. And that ends my departmental report.
Match.
How long does the applicant's name stay in the system? So they applied and then,
It will stay in indefinitely.
oh, okay.
We haven't thought about a purge, and there's no size limit that we have knowledge of at this particular point. Once the application is in, what we simply do is look at, when the job opens, if that application goes in for that job. In other words, the application stays in there, but it may not be in for that job if the person doesn't apply for it. So it's like having an application in the cloud.
So do they have the ability to go back in once they submit their application and update it or add things to it?
Yes.
Okay.
That is the advantage, that they don't have to fill out another application. They can change the information. It is theirs. It is their profile. They can upload any documents that they have that shows that they've improved their certifications or areas of abilities, and we will be able to see that in real time. Once it's uploaded, it's in seconds that we can see that.
Mr. Chairman? Yes, sir. If I could supplement Ms. Ellis's comments regarding the unemployment claims. There are two things that the girls have done a tremendous job, and no question about it. But also, as you say, if no one's going to toot your horn, no one will. We've not lost an appeal of an unemployment claim unless it was one that we had agreed to not resist in the first place, which we have on a couple of occasions. To get an employee to leave, but also 95% of those claims that were paid out fall into two categories. One would be military wives that leave and file collect unemployment, which we've got no basis to defend those claims. Secondly, is if we're not the separated employer, if someone leaves us and on good terms and everything, and takes a job elsewhere, and if sometime within the next 18 months they lose that job, and they file an unemployment claim, and the employer is not able to successfully defeat it, the only way you can defeat an unemployment claim is to show that the employee was guilty of misconduct connected with the work while they were working. So it's a fairly high standard they're held to. But if that employee collects unemployment insurance on down the road, but we were an employer at any time in the prior 18 months, we pay part of the bill, and it's automatic. We've got no defense to it. But when you compare that, if we didn't elect to be a reimbursing employee, we'd have to pay a certain percentage of every dollar of salary we paid up to a certain point. We'd be paying over $100,000, quarterly. So we don't even want to talk about going down that road. But that's where 95% of those dollars, those are the dollars they've gone to. So those are things that we could not have avoided in the first place. Is my point. So overall, and when I saw that $2,400 when Ms. Mullen emailed that to me today, I was elated because that's by far the lowest we haven't done near that good. I hate for us to say that publicly because now we're going to be held to that standard.
If you don't move one way or the other, you're not doing anything at all.
That's right.
Thank you.
400 a quarter. That's a huge, pretty good.
I don't think OSSBA does that well.
Amazing.
Moving on to your report.
With the board's permission, I probably should have been special guests. May I ask Dr. Polk to introduce a couple people she has that have not been in our board meeting before, and Mr. Smith also has a couple people.
I will go first. This is Trey Cook. He's our new transportation director. He started July 1.
Yes.
Very nice to see you here.
Jack Hanna's position.
Hit the ground running
Thank you
too.
for coming.
Yeah. You don't like to learn.
Okay.
I'd be happy to introduce Carol McPhail. She's coming to us from Snyder, and she is our new Director of Elementary Education.
Glad to see you here.
Have you introduced Mr. Sharkey and his team?
Chris Sharkey as the Director of Special Services. And he is joined by his significant other.
He told me it was a date. Okay, well, thank you for letting me backtrack there. Under the report of the superintendent, I have item A, which consideration action regarding approving new open transfers, and this should complete us for the year. And you have them before you on the.
Any questions?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Okay, under item B, we have consideration and action regarding the deregulation of parent-teacher conference days to count a full day of school and 6 hours of parent-teacher conferences as 2 school days with a 24-hour period. This is something we had previously done in the past. Last year, we had done it, but the State Department recommended that it's not necessary because of the hours-based schedule. However, that does give us two more days cushion. As we can see in the last couple of years, we've had anything from floods to power outages that have caused the school to be out. So I recommend we make this application to the State Department.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Item C is consideration and action regarding proposed revisions to policy CVFA-E2 overtime authorization form, and I believe this simplifies the process for everybody.
Any questions?
Second.
Call the roll.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Under item D, we have consideration and action regarding the proposed revisions to policy EC, the school day, and this is a result as we changed the 7-period schedule at the high schools. It did change their actual, it added 5 minutes to the day, and this just reflects that change.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Okay, item E, with consideration and action regarding the proposed revisions to policy EIAE, proficiency-based promotion, and this again just updates our policy and lines it up with the new state statutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Ms. John? Oh, sorry.
And beginning with item F, we're going to have several items that all we're doing is updating as we change from Student Adjustment Center to the Bridge Academy. And so item F is consideration action regarding the proposed revisions to the disciplinary procedure for alcohol and drug offenses, and it is simply changing the names from SAC to Bridge.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Item G, again, is changing the name from Student Adjustment Center to Bridge. It's a consideration action regarding the proposed revisions to policy FNCF, drug-free schools.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges? Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Item H, again, Bridge and SAC change, is consideration of action regarding the proposed revisions to policy FNCFC, tobacco use.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Item I, consideration and action regarding proposed revisions to policy FNCF-R, drug, mood, and physical altering substances. Again, it's a Bridge to SAC, or SAC to Bridge, name reference change.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
All right, item J, consideration and action regarding the proposed revisions to policy FNCH, assault on students or personnel. And the only change here, again, is the Bridge to, from from SAC.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Item K is consideration and action regarding proposed provisions to policy FNG, student acceptable use of personal electronic devices. Again, SAC to Bridge, name change.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Item L is consideration and action regarding proposed revisions to policy FO, student discipline, which would be a modification of our dress code, but I'm going to recommend no action at this time. I think we have a little bit more work to do on it for the next board meeting.
So that's pulled.
So that brings us to item M, Consideration action regarding proposed revisions to policy FO-R1, student discipline, and this is again a student adjustment center to bridge name change.
Move for approval.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Okay, and item N, I'm going to ask Ms. Branstetter to join us, give us a little bit of summary of where we wound up at the end of our fiscal year, which began July 1st. Ms. Branstetter.
Okay, let's move to page 39, and I will begin to explain the very complicated school finance, okay? At the top of the page, you'll see that these figures here are strictly cash. This is our cash fund balance at June 30th. So you can see that we have 13 different funds. The general fund, at the beginning of last year, when we closed, we had $4 million. We took in $114 million. We expended $109 million, and we had a fund balance of $8,444,020.91. Okay, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit in detail. Okay, then we have our co-op fund, which holds our alternative education program, and it had a math and science partnership in it at the beginning of last year. That's why it was in the negative, because it has a federal claim that needed to come in. So that came in, and then we ran the alternative ed school, and then it zeroes itself out. The building fund 21, which is our fund in which we do all the maintenance at all the buildings. It began last year with $1.4 million. It took in $14 million, and we expended $14 million. The reason that it looks very odd is because Freedom Elementary is hidden inside there. We pay the bills and we get reimbursed from the federal government, so it appears as though it's very large. But in essence, our building levy is around about a $2 million is all we usually get. So after Freedom is paid off in the next year or two, then the building levy will look more normal. But for the years in which we had Freedom in there, they will look very odd. But in the end, the building levy then closed with $1.5 million. The 25, the municipal fund, which is our old municipal city sales tax fund, the remaining funds there, that the $1.8 million that is left there on June 30th, mainly is for Freedom Elementary. Those are the funds there. The new city sales tax, we just started collecting, and in January, so we have $833,000 that is just now coming in, and that should start up the expenditures, and I'll have that in a few pages over. So the bond fund, the old bond fund, again, there are some expenses that we are pending. It was either the MacArthur Middle School or the Eisenhower Middle School HVAC that is still pending on the table for the remaining funds of that $2.8 million. The 32 fund is our new one, and we'll go over that in a little bit too. Our sinking fund is the fund in which we pay those debts, the bond funds from. We had $5.5 million at the beginning of the year. We're now down to $2.4 million. Now that some of our leases and our debts are down, we've paid them off now. You'll only see about that much roughly each year. We'll bring in a new bond and we'll pay one off each year. So that's how it'll go for the next 10 years. The endowment fund is a fund in which we place scholarships from. We have donors that had donated money, and then those scholarships are then paid out to the colleges in which the students are going. It had $54,000 at the beginning last year. This year it has $51,000, so it's pretty stable. This activity fund, or the school activity funds that come into the schools, it started with $1.9 million. It took in $3,115,000. We expended $3,059,000, and it closed with $1,977,000. It's pretty stable. It's usually about $2 million carryover. Okay, the gifts fund is the same thing as the endowments. We have donors that bring in money for scholarships each year. It's not an endowment that stays there. They bring the money in each year, and then we ship it to the colleges. The workers' comp fund is a fund from way back. We had, when we were self-funded, when our workers' comp was self-funded, we have one claim that is still pending on the table that we've been paying on for a few years. The 85 fund, the cafeteria fund, it's not really what you think. It's not cafeteria. It's really our sick leave incentive fund. But we were instructed by the State Department a year ago to close that fund, and that now is being run through our general fund. So that fund is now closed. Okay? So again, those are cash, actual cash. So the district started with 24,075,066,020, 02 at the beginning of last year, and we closed with $23,911,600.27. So pretty stable year all in all. Okay, let's talk about that $8,445,020.91 cash carryover of the general fund. When we move to the next little section, in the center where it says the fund balance of June 30th, 2015, highlighted in gray, $9,857,371.21 is the carryover or fund balance of the general fund. The reason that they aren't alike is because the $1.4 million of federal claims that have not been collected on June 30th. Had they come in on June 30th, because we have to ask for reimbursement for all federal, Title I, Title II, all of those. So the money's not in the bank by that time. So you have to add that back to it, which causes their fund balance to be in the negative because we've paid their bills and now we're getting it back. So our carryover is $9,857,371.21. So then when we drop to the last little section, there's $293,083.54 that is in what we call our inventories, which is the supplies and paper and that sort of thing in our warehouse, and also the gas on hand that we have on ready for our buses. We have to have that amount on the books, but actually it's not cash. So then you take that away, and our carryover is now at $9,564,287.67. Okay? So that sounds wonderful, but let's move to the next page. Okay. So from there, you have to take away all the purchase orders that we rolled over that were still open on June 30th. You have to roll them to July 1st to the next year, which basically are all the bills that you have to pay for June, the water, the electric, all the bills that we didn't get paid. So you take that away from there, and you're at $8,325,771.38. Okay, from there, then we begin to project where we're going to be by the time we set our budget in September. We've already been notified from the State Department that our state aid has been cut $897. We've already been notified of that. That's one cut we've already been notified. The impact aid, we get two different types of impact aid. We get a DOD impact aid payment, and it usually comes at the beginning of the year. The remaining portion of the impact aid comes after the second semester, February, March, April timeframe. That's the one that is very difficult to estimate the revenue, so it's generally on the low side. This one here is the DOD impact aid money. I've already been notified of how much we're going to receive, and it was down $280,000 from what we got a year ago. Okay, so those are two of them we've already been notified. Now, the expenditures that are going to increase next year are the salary increases are about $1.2 million. Our student software that we're about to buy is $130,000. Our water bill, again, with the city of Lawton, the rates were going up a little bit, so we're estimating some increases on our water bills. On our new phone system, we're going to have some more expenses on the new phone system that we've purchased. And then our E-rate phone system, and what that is a credit that we've been getting from the government on our phone system. The percentage that we are going to get is going to start to decrease over the next 4 to 5 years. So we've got to prepare ourselves to be able to pay that full phone bill by the time we get there. Okay? So when you take away the negatives of our revenue and the increases on our expenditures from that $8,325,000, when our goal to start the school year is to have a revenue shortfall account of $5,739,423.91. So to summarize it there, last year when we set the budget, we were at $3,137,000. We closed the year at $4,185,000. Some increases and decreases of revenue and expenditures will then hopefully set our revenue shortfall at the $5,739,000. And that's the general fund recap. Any questions or comments? Tom? Okay. All right. On page 41, pretty simple. It just gives you a recap of the building levy. And you saw that out in the beginning, but again, it also has $158,000 of purchase orders that rolled over. So it's going to have a carryover of $1,380,000. Okay? All right, and page 42, this is pretty standard. We've been doing this every month. It shows the expenditures that are in the new bond fund that we've paid out this year, what we've encumbered so far, what we've planned to pay out, and what the balance available is at $111,000. That's pretty standard there. And then the city sales tax. Again, we brought in all the money. We haven't started any projects, but I do believe there is one in the agenda tonight that will start coming from that. And that, then the next few pages are actually all the detail pages for you, in case you had any other questions. All right. Any questions? All right.
Very much.
Thank you.
One question, Mr. President. I said thank you and let you go. My apologies. A few months ago, I was estimating that we would have about a $4.5 million carryover. So here we are, $1.2 million over, which is less than 1% of our budget. It's a pretty small margin of error. The extra million or so that we got, I understand we did receive some impact aid money early that we didn't expect.
Right.
Okay.
As I mentioned, you don't know that until you get to March, April, that time frame. So in the last agenda, when we approved the supplemental appropriations, was when the increase on the impact aid was on there.
Yep.
So then that brought that up a little bit. But
So
again, not knowing from the federal government, you hate to, at the beginning of the year when we set the budget, you hate to be too high on that, because otherwise you're going to have to come up with $1 million to decrease the budget if we go too high.
Thank you. And I thought it was important for people to understand, we did project $4.5 million, but when you get a little extra payment, it's a blessing.
Yes.
Trust me. I'm not going to turn our nose at it, but
Right.
that is the reason for it. Sometimes impact aid comes in earlier than we expected, and there's nothing we can do about it. So, thank you, Mr. Prince. I won't call you back again.
Okay.
All right. Okay, next, item O is an information item, which is a final report of our school performance review for transportation and special services. Just as a reminder, last year we did a review, Oklahoma School Performance Review. An agency comes in from the state, the Oklahoma Educational Quality Improvement Educational OEQA, comes in and they actually, as a service to schools, schools request that they come in and review agencies to give an opinion. Here are things you can do to improve here. And it's a snapshot. They spend about a week in the district. Some of their ideas are great, and some of them just don't fit, because in a week you can't always tell what needs to happen. It's the first time I think Lawton has done it. And one thing we did, committed is we'd do this, and at the end of the year, we'd come back with a final report. Well, this is the final report, and just for people's reference, last year we did special services and transportation. This year, we've already completed our process for business services and maintenance, and we don't have that report yet. We're hoping to receive the preliminary draft soon, but we'll have a presentation on that in the fall at some point. But this will wrap up that process for transportation and for special services. I'll start with transportation, and I provided the board members with a kind of a summary of the major findings of the report, and it says final report. You have two. One of them says transportation and one of them says special services. So this is the final report, and I'm going to go quickly through this because there were several recommendations. And for the sake of the audience and everybody else, I'm going to go ahead and read through these, cover them. If the board members have any questions, just interrupt me as you need to. The first recommendation for transportation was develop a district policy for the operation of school buses while on private property. We developed and adopted a departmental level a form for this, which has gone through our school attorney. And so we have that. We didn't adopt a policy, but we do have a documentation in place. Whenever a school bus goes on private property, we have a form that the property owner signs, and it's going to be part of our school bus driver manual as well. So that has been adopted and put into place. Number two is purchase an electronic timekeeping system and develop accompanying policies and procedures for its use. That we had intended to pilot this summer, but I have to say we did not, and there are several reasons. The main reason is it's something we want to implement district-wide. Ms. Ellis has been working on that and has now taken over that for the district. And one of the things she felt was important, we had to get the applicant portal in place, because the applicant portal, everything else kind of ties. That goes to HR, that goes to payroll. So we had to have certain things in place before we could do that. So we do intend, and I do think this is something that we're definitely going to implement in the district, and I expect we'll have that same recommendation for the maintenance review, but that is something that's been delayed. It's definitely not been put on the back burner. It's moving forward, it's just moving slower than anticipated. But we do need a time clock system for the district. Item 3, provide all bus drivers with required annual training. Last year, we increased training by added an extra day, and we've done so again this year. Gives drivers an opportunity. It costs us about $10,000 to do an extra day of in-service for the bus drivers, but if we prevent one accident or something like that, it easily pays for itself. So we have added additional training days and opportunities for the bus drivers in order to meet that goal. Item 4 is update and maintain a standard operating procedures manual and provide regular training on those procedures. And one thing Mr. Hanna and Mr. Kyle Smith did last year is they produced, and we reviewed it at a board meeting for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure if we had one before, but we have an active and up-to-date bus driver manual. And I met with Mr. Cook today and Mr. Smith. Not only do we have it, but we're updating it annually, and it's something that school bus drivers not only receive, but they have to sign and acknowledge they received it. So they review it as part of their training. Very important. Item 5 is develop the district's policy for specific bus capacities per grade levels, and those guidelines are in place, and they're as part of our routing software. So that has been achieved as well. Item 6, propose a capital improvement school bond to replace the transportation buildings, and as we go through the strategic planning discussions with the community this fall, that will definitely be something we discuss, but that is not something transportation, if they could snap their fingers and produce a new building, they would, but unfortunately we've got to wait on that through the district. Now, item 7, improve this pool of bus drivers. That is a tremendous challenge, but Mr. Cook and Mr. Smith informed me today that for the first time last year, we included transportation in our Lawton Public Schools job fair. And so they got about 8 or 10 applicants out of that. And so constantly, I know they're investigating more inroads with Fort Sill as people retire, et cetera. So they've done a great job on that. On item 8, develop performance reports for the transportation counselor positions. We've kind of taken that off their table. We're still going to have the transportation counselors, but we're moving them to special services. They will work at expanded capacities, not only with the bus counseling services, but also with student services, attendance, truancy, those sorts of things. So that will actually change departments. Item 9, minimize the number of empty seats on regular education bus routes. And again, this is a result of our routing software. It actually helps them monitor, and the difficult part is when you have a bus, you plan on 50 riders, but then when it's a rainy day, you have 70 show up. And so it's a moving target. It's a difficult thing to do, so it's a constant monitoring process, but the routing software has been implemented and successful. And in speaking to Ms. Brandstetter recently, I think it was in May, we'd already decided at that point, at the end of April, the transportation had already cut $200,000 from last year in savings because of some of these recommendations. Item 10, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It has to do with reevaluating IEPs for bus students that would qualify, and I know Mr. Cook and Mr. Sharkey have already met, and they're already made plans, and actually we'll address that when we talk about special services, but they're way ahead of that for this year. Item 11, create and fill a routing coordinator position, and this responsibility has been split between 2 people, and they're going to continue with that model right now, but Mr. Cook and Mr. Hanna both shared the thought that having several people that know the system well is probably an advantage, because as we have people move out, we don't want to have one person leave that knows all the system only. Number 12, implement an online activity trip request and reporting system, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Cook proposed to me, they've narrowed it down to their favorite system, and the only thing they have left now is to quantify exactly how many man hours, people hours it takes to do. And we're pretty sure this is going to pay for itself very quickly. In addition, so instead of a principal or a coach having to submit 3 pieces of paper, because I'm going to take a bus trip here, it'll be online. It'll be something that can be approved, and so I have no doubt that when that is implemented, it will pay for itself, not only the first year, but possibly within the first semester. And then finally, develop bus replacement schedule for number 13. There's 2 more. Bus replacement schedule, that has been done, it's in place, and as we learn, You can develop a 5-year replacement schedule, but every year you're going to have to reassess it. And so that is in place, and it is being, it's already been reassessed once this year. So we'll see how we keep going with that. But that's good. You got to have it before you can have something to work with. Number 14, employ additional mechanics to work in the garage in 2 shifts, and that's something that didn't quite fit with our district recommendations. Mr. Hanna and the mechanics got together, and Mr. Cook and Mr. Smith this year, again, they're working on that. That's still an option on the table, but that did not fit with our district and the way our buses work. So they decided to not adopt that recommendation. And number 15, address the safety hazards in the bus garage, and those are all going to be completed by August 1st. There are a few things that have to do with the configuration of our building. It's old, it's cluttered, it's crowded, and so some things are just have to do with an old building. So hopefully that bond election will take care of that, huh? We'll get Mr. Smith on that. So that's the transportation, and in a nutshell, transportation just really knocked it out of the park. Mr. Smith working with Mr. Hanna, and then Mr. Cook. I always say his name doesn't spelled Cook, so they have done a great. He's already jumped in. It's spelled Koch, so I always want, but it's Cook. He's already jumped in, and he knows this report backward and forward. So again, I've got to applaud transportation. Mr. Cornwell's here. Mr. Hanna's no longer here, so we're going to give all the credit to Mr. Smith and Mr. Cook and Mr. Cornwell. So the entire transportation department's done a great job with this, and again, this will be my final report on this. Does the board have any questions? Okay. All right. If you don't have any questions, I'll turn to the special services review. Special services was reviewed last year, and they came out, the visitors came out with 12 recommendations, and we'll go through those recommendations as well. I'll go through them quickly. If you need, at the end, we'll have opportunity for questions, but if you need to, if anything pops up, please interrupt me. I'll try to move quickly. The first was develop budget goals by category and plan departmental activities to meet these goals. And I do have to admit, there's been a lot of work with budget monitoring. Monitoring has improved dramatically in the special services department over the last 2 years. The one thing that we haven't done is set specific goals by category. And I know that that the leadership team with Dr. Polk's help and Ms. Brandstedter's help has already started on that. So that is something that we do believe. So we're kind of halfway there. We've managed the budget. Now the next step is to develop those goals by category. On item 2, we had developed a policy and procedure handbook for special education. Instead of a procedure handbook, the suggestion was made to us that a website was going to be proposed, but not. Unfortunately, that was not implemented the last year. But the leadership team has already initiated the steps to initiate it this year, and we do expect to have that produced and ready by September 1st. And it'll be like the bus driver's manual. That'll be something that will have to be tweaked every year. So even though it didn't happen last year, it is something that has been very quickly addressed here in the last few weeks and set up for completion on September 1st. On item 3, reduce administrative costs in the special education department. And over the last year, a little over a year, actually, some of these came before the recommendation, the department has reduced costs by $174,000. So,
how does that put us in standings with other districts, comparable districts? Because as I understand that was the reason for that recommendation, was that we may have been a little high.
Yeah, we had in comparison to other districts, we had more directors and above. And this gets us closer. I don't know if it puts us exactly in line with them, but we do have some unique characteristics. I think this is appropriate for us. I think we're at an appropriate level.
So it matches our special.
Yeah.
Because we do have more special needs.
Yes.
And a different kind of a profile.
Yes, and we have a special mix in our district. So I'm very comfortable with this, but I know they're looking at it, and it's going to be something that we're going to constantly monitor from this point on. On number 4, we had assigned special education assistants based on individual student classroom needs. A checklist had been developed last year, and it did help us some progress in reducing some unnecessary hires, but what the leadership team has already initiated steps to take that one step further and make sure that our special ed assistant assignments are actually appropriate even after students age, progress in years. Sometimes you need to reassess after a student has progressed or matured and make sure. So that's something that we'll be adding this year. Again, we did get some progress on that last year. Number 5, establish a policy for proportional maximums in co-taught classrooms. The standard has been established. This is a guideline. It's not a policy, but not to exceed 1/3 or 33%. Number 6, relocate the office of the Special Education Director, the main central office. That is something that from the beginning, nobody saw as feasible for Lawton Public Schools. It didn't fit with the district, so that's not a recommendation that we ever pursued. Now, item 7, implement sustained training in special education that will impact strategies utilized at schools. We do have some evidence that there was some additional training last year, but the Special Services Leadership Team has already stepped up and put into place the items requested for the upcoming year. Item 8, provide training for special education teacher assistants who serve children that are medically fragile, have autism, or emotionally disturbed. And we really didn't address this in the previous year. There's no evidence that we did any additional training for this. However, again, in the short time this summer, we've the leadership team of Special Services in working with Mr. Sharkey and Dr. Pope, they have come up with a plan to implement this training in specific formats next year. Actually include traditional and online training. Number 9, provide training for general education, special education teachers who are required to implement a co-teaching model. And again, we didn't do anything different. We didn't implement any changes based on this recommendation last year, but the leadership team has put in some solid steps for the year forward. And so they have addressed it for the year forward. Number 10, write IEP annual goals so they are measurable and observable. Unfortunately, we didn't have any implementation of this in the previous year, but we are now at this point, the leadership team has tackled this full force. Actually, we have a measurable goal written on this, on what we want to achieve the first year, the second year, the third year. I reviewed those with Dr. Pope and Mr. Sharkey this afternoon. Item 11, and also our new special ed reporting system will help facilitate that. Item 11, include transportation in student IEPs only when they require a special education bus, etc. That is a shared goal with transportation, and again, Mr. Sharkey and Mr. Cook have already met. One thing that this is going to happen this year, although this didn't happen, we didn't review students' IEPs for this last year, and we didn't implement this last year. We already have it set that all students on a transportation IEP this coming year will be reevaluated. We already reevaluate everybody on their IEPs on an annual basis, so that's something that the special ed leadership team has committed to do for the upcoming year. It's already in place. And item 12, again, provide training for special education staff on how to do program evaluation through the use of data analysis, and again, we did not implement this over the last school year, so, but they have already identified specific steps and specific training dates and topics for the upcoming year. So the leadership team is on top of it for the coming year. Overall, there were, overall, the special services, I can say more often than not, we really didn't address the recommendations. But I can say that I am confident, because I've met with Mr. Sharkey and Dr. Pope at least twice over the last week or two on how are we going to move forward. So I'm not worried about, what we didn't do last year. I'm more worried about what are we going to do this year. And so I am confident the plan is in place. These things are either going to be addressed or the plan is already in place to address them. And I provide the board with two pieces of paper that show some information. And I want the board to understand exactly why we need to as a district, and I'm talking about as the superintendent, at the district level, we need to do a better job of supporting special education. If you can look on this sheet, which has the green and yellow, if you could pick any of the top is the OCCT, OMAP, and EOI. These are tests from 2011, 2010. If you compare those to where we are in 2014 and 15, we go from 64 to 34, 75 to 34, 80 to 41, 84 to 37. There's a significant drop among our special education students district-wide. And so therefore, that's part of the reason why we brought this departmental review in, so we could get some recommendations how to affect student achievement. And that's why it's so important that all of the items that we did not address in the past year be addressed this year. And I want you to know they're not only on our radar, but they are on the leadership team at Special Services has outdone themselves in preparing and laying the groundwork for these things to change this year. And again, we're committed at the district level, and I have to compliment Dr. Pope. We have to do everything we can to support our special ed teachers, our special services, and everything that encompasses to make them successful. And the sheet that has all the red items, this shows you a comparison between 2013 and 2014 on schools which did not, the red shows they did not meet their annual measurable objectives, or they did not experience growth. And as you can see, from the both pieces of data, and again, these are data, these are test scores, these are state level reporting data points, you can see that, we really we need to put some more attention and some more focus on our special ed students. And I am really, without equivocation, after meeting with Mr. Sharkey and Dr. Polk and knowing what the team has been doing in the background, expect great things. Expect great things. So, any questions? Okay.
Does anybody need anything removed from the consent agenda?
I do need to, on page, just a modification, on page 195, the purchase order for Catapult Learning has been reduced to 50, Kathy, I put that in here, but now I don't know what I did with it. It has been reduced significantly, so. It has been reduced to 80,000 to 50,000. I don't have the exact numbers, but please let the action reflect the new quote, which is it's right over $50,000, so. I will look for it real quick. I may have left it on my desk. Okay, it's a reduction to now it's $50,625. $50,625 is the new purchase order amount, so that's the only change that I can recommend for the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda with that change.
A second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
We have a proposed executive session for this evening.
Yes, we do.
I entertain a motion to go into executive session.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Now it's to return to open session.
I so move.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Statement of executive session minute. The Board of Education went into executive session at 5:53 PM. Members present include Eric Sharon, Vice President, Dr. Lloyd Bridges, member, Kent Jester, member, Donna Ronio, member. It's discussed include authorized by 25 Oklahoma Section 307B1 of the Oklahoma Open Meetings Act. A, the employing, promoting, or receiving resignations or individual certified support salary personnel listed on pages 207 to 209, so the board can return to open session and vote to take action on personal transactions listed on those pages of the agenda. And B, the evaluation of Superintendent Dr. Tom Deegan. During the executive session, the board discussed these items and no other items, and no action was taken. The board returned to open session at 6:30 p.m. This constitutes the minutes of the executive session. Now to your personnel report.
Under item 13, under Superintendent's Personnel Report, I have item A, vote to approve the employing, promoting, disciplining, or receiving resignations of individual certified and support salary personnel listed on pages 207 to 209.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Ms. Romeo?
Yes.
Mr. Sharon?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Under item B, consideration and action of any regarding the evaluation of Superintendent Deegan, and I don't anticipate any action.
You don't want to evaluate yourself? No. All right. Consideration of any new business. Next regular board meeting date set Monday, August 3rd, here at Shoemaker at 5 PM. Any action or considerations of concerning setting board meeting dates?
No.
Any board announcements?
No.
Consideration, a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Kate, you missed it. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Jester?
Yes.
Dr. Bridges?
Yes.
Mr. Sherem?
Yes.
Ms. Ronio?
Yes.
It's too slow today.